Got him. There we go. What's going on? What's going on? What is up, guys? Whoo! This is Gene Jensen, and this video is all about the shaky head. Ha! Nice little 3.5, 4 pounder. All right, so first of all, y'all don't beat me up on that hook set. I know it was ugly. I got tendonitis in my right hand, and when I'm holding a spinning rod and set the hook, I have absolutely zero power in my right arm. I literally will drop the rod, so I have to use both hands. It sucks. So I'm just making this video. It's been tough. But anyway, so a shaky head. Let me tell you something. This is one of those baits or one of those rigs that can and will catch fish all year long. It does not matter. It's one of those things that where if you've got to get bites, and if the bite gets tough, or if you're fishing, you know, pressured situations with pressured lakes like we are right now, you're going to catch a few on a shaky head. What is a shaky head? A shaky head is basically a jig head worm that you bounce on the bottom, you shake on the bottom, you throw around cover. It's one of those baits that you can catch fish all year long, and it will catch numbers and it'll catch sizes. My kayak tournament that I had on Logan Martin, my whole creek got blown out because of all the flooding, and the fish that were in the creek channel were gone. They basically went shallow and scattered. So I put everything away. I grabbed a shaky head and I went and hit shallow cover with a shaky head all day long, and I managed to eke out a good limit. It finished what, 37th, qualified for the championship by doing it, and it was all because of a shaky head. And so this is what made me think, well, I really need to make another video. So much has changed, and I've learned so much about a shaky head since my first shaky head video 5, 6, 7 years ago, however long ago. It was a long time ago anyway. And so I really wanted to sit down and show you guys some of the things that I've learned. Let's go over the rod and the reel and the line and everything else, all the main equipment. I use spinning rods almost 100% of the time. We'll talk about baitcaster here in just a minute. Then I use braided line as a main line. This is 20-pound test Seagar Smackdown High Vis. And that's key. You've got to be able to see your line, so that's why I'm always got high vis main line. But then I got about a 15-foot fluorocarbon leader with a BrazeX, and it is I use a long leader mainly just so I can make it last longer. I'll keep retying and retying. I'm fishing this thing around rocks and brush piles. It's going to get scratched up, it's going to get banged up, and every time I catch a fish, I'm going to have to retie. So to make it last longer, I run about a 15-pound fluorocarbon leader. The connecting knot is an FG knot. To me, that is the only knot that needs to be used to connect braid to fluorocarbon, and for several reasons. I'm going to have Jake zoom into the knot real quick. Get that line. Ow, that hook is sharp. Caught me in the foot. The FG knot, if you look at how skinny that knot is, it comes through the guides with no problem. There's nowhere for that fluorocarbon to get beat up the thousands of times it's going to go through those guides. So that is 100% knot strength knot. It is not going to break on you. It may come undone if you tie it wrong, but with a lot of practice, you can really get that knot down, and it ain't easy. I've got a little video I'm gonna post right up here for you guys to watch to learn how to tie it. But definitely something you need to learn if you're going to use braid to a fluorocarbon leader. A little bit more about the rod. I use a medium power rod most of the time. I'll use a medium heavy when I'm using 12-pound line and I'm fishing a little bit heavier cover, maybe around laydowns and stuff like that, shallow. But if I'm fishing deep brush piles and stuff like that, I still want to go with that 8 to 10-pound line, especially when they're really, really finicky or the water's super clear. I'm going to use that lighter line. Now, the weight of the jig head that I'm going to use, I'm either going to use an 1/8 ounce, a 3/16 ounce, or 1/4 ounce. Now 1/4 is a little bit on the heavy side. I think this one right here is a 1/4 ounce. No, it's a little lighter than that. This is 3/16. But a 1/4 ounce for me, I throw that one on a medium fast action bait caster, and I usually do that when I'm fishing around boat docks because I'm a lot more accurate with a bait caster than I am with a spinning rod. So around boat docks, things like that, I go to a 1/4 ounce so I can just be a little bit more accurate. Let's talk about the different types of jig heads that we have. Two different styles. You have the ones where the worm, and I'm gonna grab, and let's take it off of here. Grab this one. You have the one that's got the little screw lock on there. You just screw the worm on there and then stick it in. And then you have the old school style that's a round head with some type of a barb or something to keep the hook on there, or keep the worm on there. And I used to think that these were old school, and it really didn't matter whether you're using this type or the type with their screw lock, and the screw lock was so much easier, so I always use a screw lock. Well, I've learned recently that this has a time and a place that outshines the screw lock ones, and that time and place is almost every time they're deeper than about 4 feet, which is most of the time. So I use these a lot. Let me show you how I rig them. And this is key. This is what makes it better than that one when you're fishing deeper water. At least this is my opinion. Anyway, come in about a 1/2 inch from the tip of the worm. Okay. Try to keep it as center line as you can. Pull it through, rotate it around so it looks like this. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna look and see where that hook is gonna go into that worm. Go to that spot and then just kind of tug on it. And you want that bend in the hook. That's what you want. And this is why when this thing falls, it spirals. Okay? So it will literally just start to spiral down, and those fish will see that thing coming down, and then 9 times out of 10, that's what triggers their curiosity, and then it sits on the bottom for a second, and you shake it on a slack line, and they come down and they bite it. Anything shallower than about 4 feet, it really doesn't spiral much, so this one really won't make a difference over the one I got tied on the end of my rod in the bottom of the boat that I'm not going to reach down and grab. But definitely that makes a key when you're fishing deep. So fish these deep and fish the screw lock ones shallow. The different types of worms that I throw on a shaky head are pretty simple. They're all straight tail worms. We got the 13 Fishing BFF, the Zoom trick worm, which is a little bit skinnier, and I think that's the reason why the BFF has worked so good for me. It's because it's a little fatter in the body, and it glides down when it's falling. It glides a whole lot better. And the trick worm is just got tons and tons of different colors. I love the green pumpkins. Green pumpkin something. Green pumpkin, this is golden purple. Green pumpkin magic. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna throw green pumpkin just about anywhere. I'm gonna throw a black one as well in muddier water. And then another one would be like a skinny Cinco. Really works good on a shaky head. But I find that the longer worms have more action as you're shaking them. So 6.5, 7.5 inch worm is just perfect. And that BFF is ideal. This is the one I was using at Logan Martin when I was fishing that kayak tournament. And I grabbed it and just went to town and just started catching fish after fish, and was able to eke out a limit during very, very tough conditions. We're going to talk first about how to fish this thing deep. Tons and tons of tournaments are won on this. I know Casey Ashley won Bassmasters Classic on Lake Hartwell doing this type of thing, fishing deep brush piles and deep rock piles, that kind of stuff. We've got a deep rock pile here. It's about 15, 20 feet deep. You can fish all the way down to 50 if you want to, but this one's at about 20 feet. And like I said, whoops, helps we flip that bail. But you're gonna let it fall on a slack line. You're just going to keep feeding it line until it gets down to the bottom. And as it's falling, it's spiraling down. And then once it hits the bottom, you just let it sit there for a second. Now to shake it, when I say shake it on a slack line, what I'm talking about, and it's going to be hard to show this, I'm going to have Jake come up here and zoom in where the line's laying on the water. See where the line's laying on the water? See if you can zoom in right there. Okay. All right, so this is why I say have high vis line. You want about 3 to 5 feet of that line laying on the water. Okay, and I got a little more than that so we can see it with the camera, but you just want to shake it with that line laying on the water, and that's fishing it on a slack line, that's shaking it on a slack line. Now you might think that that you're not moving that worm at all, but you are. Even shaking it on a slack line like that with braid and stuff like that, you're still going to get action off of that worm. You're just not going to move that worm from where it's sitting. So it's just sitting there shaking back and forth, and you're just shaking it on slack line, and it's just barely moving, but it's moving enough to get a fish to bite. And this right here is the reason why I'm using a spinning rod. It is so much easier to sit here all day long. I mean, you can do this if you're in a brush pile and there's fish there and they're lethargic or they just don't want to bite. You can entice them into biting simply by putting a shaky head in that brush pile and sitting here for minutes, just shaking. And you use a spinning rod because it's so much easier to shake a bait with a spinning rod than it is a bait caster for this long. It just forces you to fish slow. All right, so the difficulty with this, especially fishing deep, is you're going to want to sit there and shake your shaky head for minutes and minutes and minutes, and it's so difficult to do. I keep wanting to move my worm, and so I keep wanting to feel and make sure, see if there's a bite, but to sit there and shake it on a slack line is just hard to do. That's why I'm using the spinning rod. First of all, spinning rod's a lot more comfortable to sit here and shake than a bait caster. Number two, it's something that I can do without having to have both hands on the reel. If I have my hand off of the reel or off of the handle, then I'm guaranteed that I'm not going to reel it in. So another one of my tricks is to take this left hand or whatever hand you reel with and stick it in your pocket and just sit here and shake with your hand, not on your reeling hand, not on your reel, and you'll be able to do it a whole lot better. Just sit there and shake it and shake it and shake it. If you don't get bit, hop it once, let it fall back down and shake it. But always, always let it sit still and let the worm do the work. All right, we're gonna go through a full sequence and let it sink down to the bottom. I'm gonna let it sink on a slack line so it's spiraling down and it hits the bottom. Hadn't hit the bottom yet. See, I'm still feeding it line. That's why I love a spinning reel. There we go, just hit the bottom. I'm gonna let it sit there for about 2-3 seconds. Then I'm gonna lay that line down on the water, like I said, like on the slack line, and I'm just gonna sit there and shake it. Okay, let me turn the boat a little bit since the wind's blowing us. And I'm just gonna shake it. All right, now say I threw it past that brush pile and it's not in the brush pile. I pick up and I don't feel anything. I'm like, man, I must not be in my brush pile, in my rock pile. I'm gonna slowly drag it, try to keep that bait as close to the bottom as I can, all the way up until I feel that rock pile or feel that brush pile. And once I feel it, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna shake. And one of the things I love about these round head, especially, and I'll leave a link up down in the description of all the baits and all the everything I'm using really, so you guys can go find it on Tackle Warehouse. But I want you to see how this jig head is shaped. That is shaped so it will come up on a, let me put my rod down so I can show you, so it can come up on a stick and sit there and shake on a stick, and then you just pull it tight and it pops over top of that stick or that limb or whatever else is on the brush pile, and it just keeps it from rolling over so much. And that's what you want to do, is you're fishing it this way, you want your limb to be sitting right here and you're just shaking it on that limb. It's not hung. You might pull and it'd be a little bit tight and it feels like it's hung, and I'm gonna show you what to do when that happens, but it's not really hung. So say you get it out there, you get it into a brush pile, and you just feel like you're hung up in that brush pile. The first thing you want to do is you want to point your rod tip directly at the bait, and you want to pull straight back just a little bit. And what that'll do is it'll pop it over top of that limb 99 times out of 100. That one time out of 100, it's going to be the hook in it, and you're going to have to break off. But that's just part of shaky head fishing. It sucks, but it happens. All right, so let's go shallow, and I'm gonna show you what I do shallow and what a shaky head can do way up shallow. For shallow stuff, I'm gonna go with one that stands up. I'm gonna go with a stand-up head, and it doesn't matter whether it's got the screw lock or not. But I'm gonna go with one that stands up. I like the screw lock because it keeps the worm from sliding down the hook on the hook set and preventing the tip of the hook from penetrating. But like I said, when you can get that spiral fall in deeper water, that's money. Screw it on there. Just like that. Same thing. Look and see where that hook's gonna go in the worm. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is light wire hooks. You really, really want to fish this with the lightest wire hook you can find. And it's hard, even at Bass Pro Shops, it's hard to find a hook that has a light enough wire. These missile bait ones are really good. They've got a really good light wire. The one thing I don't like about the missile bait jig head, now I've caught a ton of fish on them and I've had a lot of confidence in them, but after about 20 or 30 fish, that jig head starts to slide up and down. And you can heat up that lead and bend it over and it won't do it quite so bad. And it doesn't really affect much because you're gonna have the worm in there holding it, keep it from sliding down. That's just one of those things where that's just the type of the hook and the shape of the jig head is the reason. So no big deal, I've never had an issue with it, but I just know that that's what's gonna happen. But you know, 20, 30 fish. So shallow water shaky head, and I do this a lot. I love to throw around dock posts, and I love to throw around stumps and into laydowns and that kind of stuff with a shaky head. And it really is hard to get these things hung up. That's why it works so well. And I'll beef up the line a little bit. I'll switch to 10 or 12 pound test fluorocarbon on the spinning rod, but still I'm gonna throw it on a spinning rod. Unless I've really got to be pinpoint accurate, then I'm gonna change over to, like I said, a 1/4 ounce with a medium power bait caster. So here we go. Got the old stand-up head, and I'm just gonna throw it. I'm just literally just throwing it, pitching it over and around stumps. If I can throw past the stump and bring it to it, it's 10 times better. But you just sit there, and the same thing, you lay the line on the water and you start to shake it. And I'm sitting right on a root on that stump, and I'm just shaking it. Okay, no bites, you just kind of hop up. You can fish a little bit faster shallow than you can deep. That's why it's a lot of people do it. But I throw right up in the middle of everything, and I just sit there and I shake it. And I shake it. You know, one of the things that let me get it out of that tree. One of the things that I always forget to tell you is once you throw it out there, you know, throw it past the stump, reel it up to the stump, let it, drop it on a slack line, let it fall down. Then I'll let it sit there for about maybe a second, second and a half, 2 seconds, and then I'll shake it. And I'm envisioning that I just brought it up and I dropped it down and I dropped it past a fish, and that fish followed it down and is sitting there staring at it. And as it's staring at it, all of a sudden it starts to go, and it just can't stand it. It's gonna grab it, it's gonna bite it, and you're gonna set the hook and catch the fish. But that's always what I'm envisioning. Now, this is not one of those baits that is a search bait. It's not one of those you can go and just cover a lot of water with, because you're throwing it to pinpoint spots and you're working shallow. Oh my gosh. Oh, he come off. I've got no power in my right hand for a hook set. But as I was saying, when I was so rudely interrupted by that fish, you just sit there and you shake it. And that's exactly what I was doing when that fish bit. Is I was just sitting there with it on a semi-slack line or a slack line, just shaking it around that stump. And now obviously she was sitting there and she didn't like it, or she wanted to try to have a little taste of this BFF, but she thumped it. But I'm just sitting there shaking, and I'm just gonna work every one of these stumps, and then I'm just keep on moving down the bank. But like I was saying, it's not one that you want to cover a lot of water with. There's other baits that are better to cover water to find fish. But once you find them, throw one of these suckers at them, man, and they can't stand it. They're gonna bite it. It's one of my favorite baits when I've got to catch numbers, or when I just have to catch a fish and I know that the conditions aren't great. Now, the conditions don't have to be bad. Another big one. All right, I think I got this one hooked. The conditions don't have to be bad for this to work. They just have to be good conditions. This is a bigger fish. I got no power in this right hand. Look at that fish. What? Oh, goodness gracious. Look at that son of a gun. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Zoom in right here, Jake. Right in the corner of her mouth. And I was just sitting there shaking it. They cannot stand it. And that's why it's one of my favorite rigs. I don't know why I've gotten away from it over the years and not fished as much as I could fish it. But oh, it is awesome. I hope I taught you everything that I know about shaky head fishing. If I forgot to teach you something, I'm sure I'll make another video about it one day. But guys, if you like my videos, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell so you get notifications of when I launch new videos. It is the peak of the season. I'm going to be doing as many videos as I possibly can. Even during all this coronavirus stuff, I can go right down the road here to these lakes and catch some really good fish. So to help you guys get through all that mess, I'm just going to keep making as many videos as I can. But like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out of the water. Go ahead and catch some fish and have a great day. We'll see you.